Hi, it's Rabbi Robin Frisch. Chances are, if you're watching or listening to this podcast, that you love Judaism and you love dogs. And if that's the case, then Mazel Pups has the perfect calendar for you, the Positively Jewish 2025 calendar. The calendar is a collaboration between Mazel Pups and Print Art Kids. Each month features a full-color photo of a super cute dog celebrating a Jewish holiday or sporting Jewish-themed clothing and or accessories. You can learn more about the calendar or purchase one, or even better, purchase one for yourself and a few others for friends and relatives at printartkids.com/calendars. Best of all, you can feel great about buying the calendar because a portion of our profits will be donated to the Israel Guide Dog Center. You won't just be getting a great calendar, but you'll also be helping to provide guide dogs for the blind and visually impaired in Israel, provide PTSD-trained service dogs for soldiers who've experienced service-related emotional trauma, and provide emotional support dogs for those with special needs. So now, let's meet Michael Leventhal and hear about the Israel Guide Dog Center and the great work that they do. Shalom, welcome. It's Rabbi Robin Frisch, and this is the Mazel Pups podcast. If you're Jewish or Jewish, however you define that, and you love dogs, then this is the podcast for you. I am so excited to be joined for our second podcast with Michael Leventhal, who was the executive director of the Israel Guide Dog Center. He is now the treasurer of the board, and he joined us for our last podcast to tell us about the history of the center, how it works. We learned all about the dogs and their training and who they serve and all kinds of other things. And now we're going to be talking about the stories, the success stories of these dogs and the people they've helped, the communities they've helped, as well as what's happened at the Israel Guide Dog Center since October 7th and how they've used their dogs and what they do to help even more people. But before that, Michael, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Before that, I have a question for you that I'm sure I'm not the only one wondering about. How do these dogs get their names?
Interesting. We name the puppies in a litter with the same letter. So Tammy, Tango, Taffy, so we'll have the T litter. We do that because it's an old school method to make sure that you're not breeding brothers and sisters. We also use English names so that a dog isn't accidentally called Moshe, and five people, when a mother's looking for her son named Moshe, we don't want the dog to be accidentally called. So we use names that aren't Israeli and aren't Hebrew, so they're to cut down on the confusion. Recently, we decided to expand our opportunities for donors. And for anybody who gives $5,000, they can name and follow a dog. So they can choose. They can't choose when it's going to be born, and they can't choose the color, but because that just is what it is, or the sex even. But you can choose the name.
But they'll say you should have an R name for this dog, and then they can choose that name.
Or if we can wait for the next time that letter comes around, or okay. In certain circumstances, we can break away from the alphabet. And, if it's a special reason, a parent who passed or, something like that, we can make exceptions.
Very cool. And when you say they follow that dog, what does that mean besides getting to choose the name?
The dog will have its own web page, and you literally will follow the dog with updates quarterly. So you'll see how the dog is progressing. You'll see who the dog is matched with ultimately. That's where the relationship will end, though. Mm-hmm. We don't require a client to be a pen pal. We've always told our clients they're getting the dog with no strings attached. Sometimes they do create relationships, and sometimes they do continue. But once the dog goes with a client, you'll know that your dog is working and happy, but you may not be able to follow it after the second year.
So thank you. That's fascinating to me. So I want to share a story with you, actually, about my trip to the Israel Guide Dog Center in Beit Oved. As I mentioned on the last podcast, I visited 2 years ago when I was in Israel with my husband. We took a taxi from Tel Aviv. We went to Beit Oved, and we got to meet Noach Braun, who was the person behind all of this who came up with this idea, who then eventually, as you talked about in the last podcast, after a lot of searching in America, finally found your dad. And together they started the Israel Guide Dog Center. And Noach showed us around. And as I mentioned earlier, I got to see all those cute puppies. And then he had arranged for this woman to come. And this was so touching. I still get emotional when I think about it and talk about it. She came with her dog, obviously. And she told us she was born blind. And I don't think just legally blind, not that that's not a big deal, but literally blind, could not see. And her parents just didn't want to accept it. They would not accept that she was blind. They would not do anything. They would not arrange for her to have a guide dog, arrange for her to learn how to work with a cane. They just had her siblings lead her around throughout her childhood. Somehow, which I can't even imagine, she went to college, which is so impressive and just impossible to understand for me. But she managed to accomplish that. And then friends would lead her around at college. And eventually she got married and had children. And her young children, when I say young, I mean 5, 6 years old, were leading her around. So not only did she have to deal with this of having no independence of her own, she had to deal with the guilt. And she said there was a lot of guilt of her own children missing out on major parts of their childhood because they were leading her around so she could get places. And somehow I don't remember exactly how it happened, but she got connected with the Israel Guide Dog Center. She got a dog. Her entire life changed. Her children's entire lives changed. She became independent. She could go where she wanted to go. Her children could be kids and do what they wanted to do. It had an impact, again, not just on her, but her entire family. And it was such a beautiful story. The only hard part of the story is, why didn't this happen to her? Why couldn't this have happened 30 years earlier? But she is now able to have this full and meaningful life. And it was such a touching story. And I am sure that there are many more, each unique stories like that. So I'd love to hear from you if you're able to share some stories with us.
Every client has an amazing story. And most of the things about our clients is a desire to get on with their lives. Blindness is a terrible condition. If you ask somebody what they're most afraid of medically, cancer is number 1 and blindness is number 2. Most people go blind over time. It's rare to be blind at birth. People may not know this, and it still happens today, that a child in an incubator who's forced oxygen, that is a cause of blindness. And it still happens today. My daughter's a pediatrician, and I asked her about it. And she said, "Dad, would you rather have the baby live or be blind?" And so there are times that because of the oxygen an infant is given, that it actually causes a problem and blindness. But most of the time, we go blind later in life and from disease. And most of the time, we fight it. We compensate. And almost all of the clients that I've met with a guide dog have stories about the day when their lives were in danger and realized this doesn't work anymore. Whether it's walking into the street or not knowingly, whatever it was, but there's always an incident that causes them to do it. Then we have, as you were pointing out, there was a family, the family dynamic changes. Let's say we have a husband and wife, and the husband is slowly going blind, and the wife slowly is taking on more and more and more responsibility for her husband, and she has become a human guide. And he is so dependent on her. Now the idea of a dog coming into their lives, and suddenly she thinks, well, I'm not going to be needed anymore. Believe it or not, that is a big problem. So people are resistant from getting a dog because they feel that their role in the relationship will change. As strange as that may sound. When a client gets a dog, it's absolutely amazing how it's changing their lives. And every client I've ever met, and I'm talking about every single one, has told me that their life just turned around. And they never realized how much the dog would make them more social. This was something that they didn't even conceive. Because think of it, as you walk with a cane and you're going down the street, what is your reaction to a person walking toward you with a cane?
You want to be out of their way.
You get out of their way. You get quiet. Matter of fact, here's a great story. There was a guy named Moshe Weiss who told me, and he went blind suddenly, overnight, that one day he was a software engineer for Microsoft, had a great job, high-end, well-paid job, and he loved the opera. So he went to the opera with his wife, and he noticed the lights were twinkling. Something wasn't quite right. And the next day he woke up stone blind. Now, this is very, very rare. I mean, normally there's a progression. You have a time to think about it. But this guy was sighted today and blind tomorrow. And he was devastated. And at first, you must learn to walk with a cane first. You can't go from blindness to a guide dog. You need to learn mobility. You need to learn awareness, spatial awareness. Where am I? What direction am I facing? So you need to have mobility before you can lead a dog, because a dog doesn't know where you want to go. It's just going to get you there safely. So this guy, Moshe, told me a story. He walks in a mall near his home, and the malls are just like our malls, beautiful, tile floor, well lit. And
same stores.
Same stores. And he walked down the hallway of the mall, and he could feel people separating, like the Red Sea. And people got quiet, and nobody wanted to talk to him, and nobody came up to help him. The same guy gets a guide dog. The same guy walks in the same mall down the same aisleway, but now people approach him. Oh, your dog is so beautiful. Can I pet him? What's his name? And now he has a chance to say to them, what's your name? Where are you from? Do you have a dog? And it created a relationship where suddenly he's now talking to people again and not afraid. And this is something I love to tell people about us. We don't say to people, don't go near our dog. Don't pet our dog. Now, when a person is walking with their guide dog, actively walking, don't disturb them. Don't pet the dog. Don't distract the dog. True. But if they're sitting on a park bench, if they're sitting in a restaurant, if the dog is not actively working, then you can say to our client, may I pet your dog? And almost always he's going to say yes. Why? The dog's going to be happy. The tail's wagging. That's a good thing. But now we've trained our clients to talk to you, to strike up a conversation, to have a personal relationship. One of our clients has a funny thing. She says her dog is a social lubricant, that it was a way for her to talk and meet with people. So these are parts of the stories. I had another great story of a guy with young children, and he had diabetes and became blind. And he said he wanted to curl up in a ball and die. He didn't want to go out of his house. He didn't want to do anything. Finally, he got a dog, and he said to me, now I have a relationship with my children's friends. Before, they were afraid of me. They wouldn't come near me. They saw the cane. They didn't want to come near me. Now I come to the school to pick my child up at lunch or dinner or at the end of the day, and the kids all run. Can we come over to your house? Can we play with your dog? And he said, I know my children's friends because of the dog. So it's the relationships that the dogs help the client to create that is so life-changing. And this is something that I never even considered.
And I would imagine for the children, instead of having to feel, because they're kids, some sort of embarrassment that dad can't see and he's not like the other dads, suddenly it's like there's something cool about my dad and you want to come to my house because we have something interesting, which can have a tremendous effect on kids.
Correct.
Because they often don't like when their parents are different than someone else's parents.
And our clients who went from canes to dogs say, when I'm walking with a cane, it's like waving a flag. Hey, everybody, look at me. I'm blind, because you see the cane. But when you're walking with a dog, you very rarely do you realize that it's a blind person. You see a person, it looks like a leash kind of, and you don't really realize it until you might really get up close and see that it's a rigid harness and understand, oh, that person can't see. Our dogs, we train them in Israel. And it's very important to train them in Israel so they get a Israeli mindset. In America, we stand in line. We wait politely in line. If we're going to buy a movie theater ticket, if we're getting on a bus, we all stand in a nice straight queue. Israel's not that way. People push in. It's a crowd of people. Now, an American dog wouldn't understand that they need to have a Yiddish kampf. They need to have an Israeli mindset to push in. We literally train the dogs to push in. I had another great story. We're in Toronto at an event. We said we have an office in Toronto, and they do fundraising for us as well. And we went to an event, and it was a really crowded space. I mean, really crowded. And the client needed to go to the bathroom. And the trainer said to me, Mike, would you hold the dog here? I'm going to take the client to the bathroom. And, it's just too many people to and going to the restroom. It'd just be easier. Sure, no problem. So they went downstairs, they went to the restroom, and they came up on the wrong side of the theater. And when I tell you packed, it's shoulder to shoulder packed. So he calls me on my phone. He says, Mike, we're on the other side of the theater. Can you come to us? And I said, well, how am I going to get through the crowd? He said, Mike, hold the harness, close your eyes, and say kadima, which is forward in Hebrew. And I did. And the dog pulled me through the crowd. Now, the people were jumping to the side and offended, why are you bumping me, until they looked down and saw that I'm working with the dog, and they all understood. But this dog pulled me through the crowd like I wouldn't have been able to do myself. So we teach the dogs to have an Israeli mindset and to push through crowds. So another cute story.
But it does really emphasize, again, the importance of the dog being trained in Israel,
Right.
not in another country, being trained certainly in Hebrew. And I love the idea of not having a Hebrew name, because that could create a problem in Israel as well.
And think about, unfortunately, most of our dogs are raised in Beersheba, and there's a lot of rocket attacks in that part of the country. This is a good thing for our dogs to hear. Hear the booms, hear the sirens, know what to do. And be desensitized to it. Now, my dog, if there had been a boom, would have been cowering under the bed.
I was just going to say my dog Bo would be right under the bed,
Right.
except now he doesn't fit, so he's under the night table.
But in Israel, if there's a boom, what are we going to do?
Yeah, the dogs have to lead them where they need to go.
They need to lead them to safety, lead them to shelter, or lay down on the ground. Get down if you don't have a safe place to go. One of our clients, I asked, tell me about the sirens and how does your dog react to the sirens? He says, Lynn loves the sirens. I said, what do you mean she loves the sirens? Every time the siren goes off, they leave their apartment, go down into the basement, into the shelter, where all the other people from the apartment congregate. And there are children there. So the dog gets to play with the kids, and to the dog, the siren means, okay, I'm leaving the apartment, we're going down, and we're going to play with children. And at the end, when all clear is sounded, they let the kids run outside, and Lynn ran with the dog and ran with the kids. And so to the dog, this was a good thing. The siren is a good thing. It really is quite remarkable.
So that's actually a perfect transition, because we wanted to talk about October 7th. And clearly there have been a lot more sirens and a lot more of a dangerous situation, and a lot of people suffering as a result of what happened on October 7th. So how does Israel Guide Dog Center, do they just go carrying on business as usual because they're doing something so important they can't stop doing? I'm imagining there's a very much increased need for especially emotional support dogs, and dogs, not necessarily guide dogs, but dogs for other reasons to help people. There's obviously a limited number of dogs, more need for help from people here in America and throughout the world financially. But what have they been doing, and what have their additional requests of people coming to them been for?
October 7th rocked our world. And if you live in Israel, it was so devastating. We did lose a client. There was a client at the music festival. He and his girlfriend were killed. They didn't have the dog with them because of the girlfriend help and the loud music, and they didn't want the dog to be disturbed by the music. So the dog was not with them. But so it hit home. In addition, remember we talked about all of our puppy raisers or university students. Well, they are recently out of the Army, which meant they all went back into the Army. Suddenly, we had 100 dogs without puppy raisers. This is highly unusual. I mean, this is a very important aspect of care for the dog, is the socialization and doing all of these things each month to become prepared to be guide dogs. So suddenly we had 100 dogs back at the center. Training had to stop. We are geographically on a direct line between Gaza and Tel Aviv. We are directly in the middle. So, as the rockets were being sent over toward Tel Aviv, we can't continue to operate as a center. So everything stopped. Life stopped. The world changed. We suddenly had to find a lot of volunteers to take the puppies. And there was a sudden need. All of the kibbutzniks who were taken out of the South and moved to the center of the country, many of the people in the North taken out of their homes and moved to the center of the country. Suddenly we had these tremendous refugee centers, if you will, of our people who had to leave their homes and have just been through this traumatic experience. So we decided to bring the puppies to them, and that's what we did. So the first thing, and we, by the way, several of our trainers had to go back into the military as well. But the first thing we did, we had vans and volunteers, and we took the puppies to the centers of the relocation center. I shouldn't have said refugee. It's really a relocation center for our people, and let the dogs be with the people and help reduce their stress. And just the interaction with our puppies did that for us. Since the war began, 4 soldiers have been blinded. It is unusual to be blinded in both eyes, but we have 4 soldiers who have become completely blinded. We know that they will eventually be on our radar for getting a dog when they're ready.
Are they in the hospital now, or they're home?
They're all in different stages. So as you pointed out, PTSD is going to be huge. This is a major problem, way bigger than us. We can't supply enough dogs for the number of people that are going to need them. So what we do is the Ministry of Defense helps us identify the most needy, the people who have tried to commit suicide, the people who are in the deepest depression. They are the ones who will get a dog first. And so our lives have changed, and we are slowly getting back to normal. We are slowly getting back to training guide dogs as well. Our main mission is guide dogs, but we will do as many of the special needs dogs and PTSD dogs as we can. And again, with the help of people around the world, because this costs money. It's not an inexpensive process. But and something else I want to mention, I didn't mention in the first podcast, if you look us up on Charity Navigator or GuideStar, we are the highest rated. There's nobody with a higher rating. So you know that the money that you give to us goes to where you want it to go. Last year, we had 96% going to the cause, 4% going to administration and overhead. That is an incredibly low number. If you're a giver, you know, you should know. So when you give to the Israel Guide Dog Center, be very comforted in knowing your money is going where you want it to go. It's helping people. It's changing lives in a profound way. And we can't do it without your help.
In Israel, who pays for the service dogs? Once you have the client who gets the dog, does the client have to pay the full cost for the dog?
Our clients pay nothing.
Wow.
There's no cost to any client. We ask a small donation from children with autism, on the autism spectrum, from the families. And that's as much as they can, or, again, no dog is going to be denied because there's no payment. But guide dogs and PTSD service dogs are absolutely free to our clients. We get about 8% of our budget from the government. If a soldier has been wounded in battle, the government gives us about $18,000 for that dog. Each dog costs us about $50,000. Our cost.
So the government's still not, they're paying a nice amount,
fraction,
but not even half.
A fraction. In the PTSD service program, they are giving us $10,000 per dog. Our cost for those dogs are about $18,000. Again, it's a help, and we're glad,
but it's not.
But it doesn't cover the full cost. It's again because of generous people around the world who see the value in what we do that we're able to do what we do. Now, Israel is very unique in that once we certify a dog, and we say to the government, and it's only for guide dogs, once we certify the dog has been properly trained, the Israeli government gives a stipend to the blind people of $100 a month. And this is to pay for food, medicine, toys, and frankly, it's more than they need. So there's an association for the blind in Israel, and they pool their money that they didn't need for food or medicine. And if there's a major need, unfortunately a dog gets cancer or has a major medical issue, they pooled their money to help each other and cover the cost.
Is that voluntary?
Voluntary.
That's amazing.
But they all do it. And it is,
wow.
and it's with our help and with the vets that we direct them toward. And so in America, you're on your own. And it depends on what your financial ability is. But in Israel, you're never at a loss of a dog because of money. It's only because of your inability to care, maybe. In order to maintain a dog, you've got to be able to walk at least 2 miles a day. The dog needs exercise, needs to get out, needs to walk. And so somebody who becomes elderly and unable to walk that far no longer qualifies for a dog because the dog needs that to be healthy. Right. And we want to make sure the dogs are in a healthy, quality environment.
But again, that just shows your care for the human, but also that there's great care for the dogs, and the dogs are being treated in a really wonderful way.
And we follow up with every dog at least every 6 months, and we don't let you know we're coming. We sit outside your house and we watch you leave, and we watch how you work with your dog, and we're looking at the dog and making sure it doesn't have a bad habit. They're supposed to stop at a certain point at an intersection, and if they're not doing that any longer, we're going to follow up and help you to get the dog back on steady track.
So I could talk to you forever, and I'm going to have you come back in the future. But in the meantime, is there anything else you want to make sure that we know that you want to share about the Israel Guide Dog Center? I do want to ask you again to share how we can give to the Israel Guide Dog Center, both financially as well as things that we can do, but also if there's anything else you'd like to share.
Well, you know that Israel just released 4 hostages. We've already heard from one of those 4 who had suffered terribly. Apparently, we're not hearing the stories. I'm not allowed to share with you what happened, but the horror that these people went through during captivity, and they feel that he is deserving of a dog, and the government has asked us to move this person up on the list, and we of course will. But this doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's $4 million a year to maintain the center, to run the center. And every year we have to start fresh. Every January 1st, we begin again to try to raise $4 million. So to get your help, anything you can give, you can follow a puppy now. You can give monthly and get regular updates on a puppy. You can donate to name a puppy, and just give because you want to give. The money's going to the right place. You know that we're using it well. Another thing I think we wanted to mention was blindness does not discriminate, and neither do we. We have had Muslim clients, we've had Druze clients, Christian Arab clients. As long as you show us that the dog is going to improve your life, you will become a client of ours. And I have wonderful stories about how Arab clients have said to me, I can't wait to go back to my village and tell my friends we've been lied to. I can't wait. I expected to be treated poorly, but I wasn't. And that there are good Jews. And they fully anticipated being treated as third-class citizens and couldn't get over how nice we were to them and how home welcoming we were and how helpful we were. And I have so many stories. I wish we had more time for those stories, because this is bridging the gap. One of the clients said to me, I want to be an ambassador for peace. I want to tell people in my community that we can live peacefully with the Israelis, that they're not all evil. And this is what they've been taught, though. He was taught that we were evil. And an 18-year-old kid, we turned his mind around because we treated him with kindness and respect. And if you want to support an organization that does that, we're the one for you. If you'll go on the website, it's israelguidedog.org. We again invite you to come visit the center. We'd love to have visitors. Just let us know you're coming and we'll arrange for a tour. You can't just show up because we're a working school. But this is a great cause. And if you know Bar Bat Mitzvah students, we have wonderful projects for them. And they just have to get in touch with us in our office in Pennsylvania, and we'll be happy to supply them with a full boat of materials.
And I'll say also follow them on social media. Not only will you hear what they're doing, and follow the U.S. Israel Guide Dogs, follow Israel Guide Dogs in Israel. I follow Canada, I follow England. Not only will you learn what they're doing and all the important work, you will see the cutest dogs ever. It's just fun and happy and wonderful. But Michael, I can't thank you enough. I hope you'll come back in the future. Obviously, there's so much more to learn and to do. And, you really did teach us not just about the impact on the individual, but how this could help lead to a better situation in Israel, that it doesn't matter if you're Arab, Druze, or whatever you are. If you're a person who needs a dog, you get a dog. And hopefully one day that can be the society that just people can respect each other as people and realize that Israel as a Jewish state also can be good for other people as well. So thank you for the small lessons, the big lessons, everything that you did with us, all the great stories. I truly hope that people will support Israel Guide Dog. It's a really, really important organization. And I'm so thankful for all of you for being here. Hopefully you heard our last episode as well, featuring Michael with different information about Israel Guide Dogs, and I'm sure we'll have him back in the future. As I said, there's so much more to learn. And again, thank you to all of you for your support of Mazel Pups and for being here with us for this episode.
Hello, shalom friends. I'm Bo, one of Rabbi Robin's dogs and our original Mazel Pup. If you enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a pause and 5-star rating, and follow us on social media. Thanks for listening.